And if the locals don't show, ask Private Jackson, barely 22 years old. Sarah met his eyes. Then we walk 30 miles through hostile territory and pray we're lucky. But we don't think about that. We focus on the mission, one step at a time. They flew out in an unmarked helicopter at 23:45 hours. The night was moonless and cold. Sarah felt a familiar rush of adrenaline mixed with fear. She'd done operations like this before, but never without official support, never without a safety net. Every decision now carried double the weight. They landed 3 miles from the target at 1:37 a.m. The desert stretched around them in shadows and silence. Sarah took point, moving through the darkness with practiced efficiency. The team followed in tight formation, communicating with hand signals. After 90 minutes of careful movement, they reached a ridge overlooking the compound where Ghost Team was trapped. Through night vision binoculars, Sarah counted 18 enemy fighters visible around the perimeter. Firelight flickered from several positions. She could see the compound's northern wall, pockmarked with bullet holes. Ghost Team was somewhere inside, running out of time and ammunition. Chen, take Warren and Jackson. Circle to the east side. When I fire the first shot, light up that vehicle on the south end. Make them think we're a much bigger force. The rest of you, with me, we go in through the north wall while they're distracted. Captain, that's a suicide move, whispered Corporal Davis. Only if they see us coming. Trust the plan. At 3:42 a.m., Sarah fired. The sound cracked through the night, and suddenly the desert exploded with noise. Chen's team hit the vehicle with precision, the fuel tank erupting in orange flame. Enemy fighters scattered, shouting in confusion, firing wildly into the darkness. Sarah and her team sprinted toward the north wall, low and fast. They breached the compound in seconds. Inside, she found 4 exhausted soldiers from Ghost Team huddled behind overturned furniture, their faces hollow with fear and relief. Captain Mitchell, the team leader, a young lieutenant named Torres, stared at her like she was a ghost. How did you? Questions later. Can you move? Yes. Then let's go. Now. But as they turned to evacuate, enemy fighters began pouring back into the compound. Sarah's heart hammered. They were trapped in a crossfire, the exit blocked. She made a split-second decision, one that defied tactical logic but trusted gut instinct. Everyone, through the back. There's a livestock pen on the east side. We punch through there and make for the riverbed. Chen, we're coming to you hot. They ran through smoke and chaos, bullets snapping past. Warren provided covering fire while Jackson helped a wounded Ghost Team member. Sarah felt time stretch and compress, every second both infinite and too short. They crashed through a weak section of the compound's rear wall and found themselves in open desert. The riverbed appeared ahead like a promised sanctuary. They slid down the sandy embankment just as headlights appeared in the distance. The local contact, right on time. Sarah wanted to weep with relief. 30 minutes later, crammed into 2 vehicles racing toward the border, Torres looked at Sarah with tears in his eyes. You came for us. Command said no one was coming. Command doesn't know everything, Sarah replied, her voice hoarse from dust and adrenaline. Sometimes you have to make your own call. Chen caught her eye from the front seat and nodded. They'd succeeded against impossible odds, but Sarah knew the hard part would come later, explaining this to their superiors, facing potential consequences. But right now, 11 soldiers who shouldn't have survived the night were alive and heading home. As dawn broke over the desert, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Sarah closed her eyes. Her leave was over. Her quiet Montana porch felt like another lifetime. But as she felt the warmth of her team around her, soldiers who trusted her enough to risk everything, she realized some things mattered more than rest. Sometimes a mission isn't over just because you've left the battlefield. Sometimes courage means answering the call, even when it's your turn to rest. And sometimes the greatest victories happen in the margins, where official orders end and human loyalty begins. Sarah knew she'd made the right choice. She'd do it again without hesitation, because that's what leaders do. They show up when their people need them most, no matter the cost. Captain Sarah Mitchell sat on her parents' porch in rural Montana, watching the sun dip behind the mountains. For the first time in 18 months, she wasn't thinking about missions, combat zones, or the way to command. The swing creaked gently beneath her as she sipped lukewarm coffee, savoring the silence. Her phone buzzed on the wooden armrest, but she ignored it. 3 more weeks of leave stretched ahead of her like an open road, and she intended to enjoy every peaceful moment. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The phone buzzed again. Then again. Sarah frowned and glanced at the screen. 7 missed calls from Lieutenant Marcus Chen, her former second-in-command. Her stomach tightened. Marcus knew better than to call unless it was serious. She answered on the next ring. "Chen, this better be important," she said, trying to keep her tone light. "Captain, we need you." His voice was strained, barely above a whisper. "It's Ghost Team. They are trapped in the Kandahar province, 20 miles behind enemy lines. Command says extraction isn't possible for 48 hours, but intel suggests they won't last 12. We're putting together an unsanctioned rescue op." Sarah's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. Ghost Team was a reconnaissance unit she'd trained 2 years ago. Good soldiers. Young soldiers. The thought of them pinned down, waiting for help that might never come, made her chest ache. Unsanctioned? Chen, you could lose your career. With respect, Captain, I learned from the best. You taught us that we don't leave people behind. There was a pause. We need your expertise. You know that terrain better than anyone. I've got 6 volunteers ready to move at 2300 hours tonight. But without you, our odds drop to almost nothing. Sarah closed her eyes. She could see her mother through the kitchen window, humming while preparing dinner. She thought about her father's upcoming birthday party, about sleeping past dawn, about healing the parts of her that 18 months of war had worn down. But she also thought about the scared voices of young soldiers calling for help in the dark, counting down the hours, wondering if anyone cared enough to come. "Send me the coordinates," she said quietly. "I'll meet you at the A Strip by 2200 hours. "Thank you, Captain. I knew." "Don't thank me yet. Chen, if we pull this off, we'll be lucky. If we don't, we'll all be court-martialed or worse." She hung up and stared at the mountains, their peaks now dark against the fading light. Inside, her mother looked up from chopping vegetables. "Everything okay, honey?" Sarah forced a smile. "Mom, I have to go back early. Something came up." Her mother's face fell, but she nodded slowly. She'd been a military wife for 30 years before Sarah's father retired. She understood. Be safe, baby girl. Come home when you can. By 22:15 hours, Sarah stood in a drafty hangar with Chen and 6 other soldiers. She recognized 4 of them from her old unit. They wore civilian clothes and carried unmarked gear. This operation didn't exist on any official record. "Here's what we know," Sarah said, spreading a satellite map across a metal table. "Ghost Team is holed up in a compound here, 2 miles east of a village called Jari. Enemy forces have them surrounded. Approximately 30 hostiles, possibly more. The terrain is rocky, minimal cover. Our advantage is that they won't expect a small team to attempt a rescue." Sergeant Lisa Warren, a medic with nerves of steel, leaned forward. "What's the extraction plan, Captain?" "There's a dry riverbed half a mile north of their position. If we can create a diversion and get Ghost Team to that riverbed, we've got a local contact with vehicles who will take us to a secondary extraction point across the border. It's risky, but it's possible.